How much did you pay for this shit?
I paid 100 G's.
So you doubled your money.
I'm the Joker here, all right? I got fucked. $1 million is what I was supposed to get. I get a fucking what? Made 65 G's?
You gave some brothers from Ethiopia $100,000 for something that you thought was worth $1 million? You don't see nothing wrong with that, Howard?
Ethiopian miners, you know what these fucking guys make? $100,000 is 50 lifetimes for these fucking guys.
$1 million is more. That's my point. You understand?
You want to win by 1 point or fucking 30 points, KG, right? I see you out there when the fucking stadium's all booing you. You're 30 up. You're still going full tilt. Let's see what has Vegas got you guys at tonight. Take a look. Let's see.
Are you seriously going to pull this up right here?
Look at this shit. The Sixers are supposed to win the game tonight, they think.
I don't keep track of none of this shit. Who gives a fuck?
They think on game 7 you're not getting fucking 18 points. They don't think you're going to get 8 rebounds.
These guys don't know shit about me.
What the fuck do they do? Doesn't that make you want to fucking kill them? Doesn't that make you want to say fuck you for doubting me? Doesn't that make you want to step on fucking Elliot Brand's fucking neck? Come on, KG. This is no different from that. This is me, all right? I'm not a fucking athlete. This is my fucking way. This is how I win. All the fucking hard work I do, all the fucking ass kicking and the dudes I pay, you're not going to score one big on game 7? Fuck these people, right? That's how you feel. I know you do. So look, let's fucking bet on this. Let's bet on this shit. That was so fun. That was fun.
Amazing. I have to say, I did not expect that level of quality in your Adam Sandler impression.
Thank you.
You will note that I did not decide to do a Kevin Garnett impression.
That's okay. You know, I have so much fun with this. Doing Samuel L. Jackson for Pulp Fiction, like...
Yeah,
you know,
you're really getting into it. I love it.
I'm not an actor, but I like acting when I can read the piece of paper in front of me and I'm literally just trying to copy something that someone's already done way better than I have. And there's no pressure because I'm not doing it in front of anybody.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Which is not acting. So that's why I'm not an actor. Welcome to Your Pick, a film podcast. I'm Tatum.
And I'm Geneva.
We are two friends who love movies and love sharing them with each other. Each week we take turns picking a film that is close to our hearts and talk about why it moves us, to tears, to laughter, and everything in between. We celebrate the craft of filmmaking as well as the unique and personal ways we find meaning in the movies we watch. Hi, Geneva.
Hi, Tatum.
Thanks for reading that fun quote with me. That was a good time.
You're welcome. I had a great
time. Can you get us started and tell us what you've been watching this week, if anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple things this week. So I saw the 1976 movie Marathon Man. I've been a little bit of a 70s sort of paranoid thriller phase right now, which I'm very much enjoying.
There's a lot of great movies like that came out in the 70s.
Yes, there are. So Marathon Man is Dustin Hoffman as a New York City, I think it's a Columbia University grad student. And his brother is Roy Scheider, who's like, he thinks he's a businessman, but he's actually some sort of government official / secret agent. And then he gets killed by Laurence Olivier, who's a Nazi who's hiding out in Argentina, but comes to New York to go to try and get some diamonds that he had hidden away. And basically it's a lot of just running around and terrifying torture scenes involving dental equipment and a lot of Dustin Hoffman jogging and Roy Scheider being incredibly hot, which he always is. But yeah, it was a good time. It wasn't my favorite of that genre that I've seen, but I would definitely recommend it. It's a great New York in the 1970s movie. Great kind of a time capsule of the era. Yeah, I had a good time with it. Have you ever seen Marathon Man?
I have.
Yeah, what did you think of it?
I think it's fine. It's not my favorite movie ever, but I was like, I'm glad I saw it. Will I watch it again? Probably not. But it
Yeah.
wasn't a waste of my time. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I rewatched with a group of friends, the movie The Lady Eve from the early 40s with Barbara Stanwyck and Henry Fonda. It's a Preston Sturges movie, like kind of a witty screwball comedy type of thing, about a con woman who sets her sights on a mild-mannered snake biologist who's also like the wealthy heir to a beer fortune. I was like, you're always a little bit nervous, especially when it's an older movie and it's friends that you haven't done too many movie nights with them, so you're not quite sure how something's going to go over, but it went over great. They loved it. It's such a fun movie. Barbara Stanwyck, I have the hugest crush on her. She's just absolutely radiant and can do absolutely anything, and her chemistry with Henry Fonda is great. There's so much witty wordplay in this movie. Yeah, it's such a good time. I strongly recommend The Lady Eve if you've never seen it, or any of Preston Sturges's movies. I've only seen a few so far, but I've loved everything that I've seen and I want to see more. So yeah.
Nice. For some reason I know that name, Preston Sturges, but I can't think of what other movies he's done, but it's a familiar name to me for some reason. Yeah,
he's kind of like he had a series of really classic comedies in that sort of 30s 40s era, and there are a lot of filmmakers that take inspiration from him, like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in the Coen brothers movie is very much kind of taking spiritual inspiration from his movie Sullivan's Travels, which I'm hoping to do an episode on at some point. So yeah, I think there are a lot of filmmakers working today who probably cite Preston Sturges as an influence.
Cool. Yeah, so as far as anything I've been watching, I haven't been watching that much because it's only been a few days since we recorded. But I continue my rewatch of Breaking Bad. I'm in towards the end of season 3. It's phenomenal. It's really good. Breaking Bad is good. Love that show. Yep. Yeah.
Controversial statements here from Tatum.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's so good. It's incredible, and the acting is just so strong, and the acting only gets stronger as the show goes on, and Vince Gilligan really pushes his actors to dive more deeply into their characters and how complex they are and how twisted they are. And, we're getting great performances from Dean Harris and Anna Gunn and obviously Bryan Cranston, Aaron Paul. But it's amazing how they just continue to grow and develop and dive deeper into their characters. It's really amazing to watch. So even if the story wasn't as incredible as it is, it would be worth watching just for the acting. So yeah. But yeah, so that's what I've been watching. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our review today. So today on the show, we're discussing the Safdie Brothers film, Uncut Gems, released in 2019, starring Adam Sandler, Julia Fax, Kevin Garnett, Eric Bogosian, Idina Menzel, Lakeith Stanfield, and Keith William Richards. And just for some fun casting facts, Jonah Hill was originally cast to play Howard, which I think could have potentially maybe worked because I can see him pulling off the New York type of hustler vibe, but it would have been very different from who we see Adam Sandler transform into. So I thought that was interesting.
It could work, but it would be a very different movie, I think.
Yeah. I thought that was super interesting. And then also before they landed on KG, the Safdie brothers did go through a couple other basketball players. Kobe Bryant was in the running. I don't know if this is actually true because the internet is weird sometimes, but apparently Kobe Bryant was maybe supposedly offered the role, but he was like, nope, I want to direct the film. And the Safdie brothers were like, nope. Again, I don't know if that's true. That could just be the internet, but that's something that I saw. Go look it up for yourself. See if it's true. I don't know. And then also Amari Stoudemire was considered to play the role as well, but he was busy playing basketball because they were shooting during the basketball season. So the Safdie brothers ended up going with a retired basketball player who they knew their schedule would be more available. So we got Kevin Garnett, who we'll talk about him, but his performance is incredible in this movie. The fact that he is not an actor is just wild to me, and I'm upset that he hasn't been offered more roles. Maybe he doesn't want to act. Maybe this is just a one-time thing for him, but he blew me away. Anyway, we'll get into him later.
Do you have any did you come across anything about had he ever acted before? Was there something in particular that made them think of him, or was it purely basketball player plus retired, so has a little bit more time in his schedule?
As far as I know, he had not acted before. And I'm a sports person. I'm not a huge basketball person. So maybe KG is the type of basketball player where, like, even though he's retired, he's still notable enough that people would know who he is to feel like this character has some weight, as opposed to here's some basketball player that no one knows. But I don't actually know his career at all. So
also, from one completely not knowledgeable about the basketball world person to one partially knowledgeable about the basketball world person, does he actually go by KG outside of the context of the movie, or is that just a Howard in this movie? Is that like his nickname with fans?
I think he goes by KG in the like real world, but again, I don't know.
Yeah, because I feel like very much you could see that being the case, but also I could see Howard just starting to call him KG and calling him KG when no one else does.
Yeah, I feel like he probably goes by KG, but I don't actually know. Oh, well, I just looked it up. Yeah, KG. He goes by KG. But yeah, anyway, maybe that's why they set it back in 2012. Maybe he was playing basketball in 2012, and that's why they... Anyway, I don't know. We're getting off topic. I mean, not really, but continuing on. So co-written by the Safdie brothers and frequent collaborator Ronald Bronstein, Uncut Gems was influenced by the Safdie brothers' childhood growing up with a dad who worked in the New York Diamond District. The film tells the story of New York jewelry dealer and gambling addict Howard Ratner. After loaning 16 carats of black opal, which he claims to be worth over $1 million to the NBA player KG, Howard becomes wrapped up in a complicated web of money deals and unpaid loans that he scrambles to get under control. So that's kind of the basic premise of the film. And just regarding the monetary success of this movie. So this movie was made with a budget of $19 million, which seems very low to me considering the cast that they have. And we'll talk about this while we're recording, but the props of this movie are out of this world. So $19 million seems like a pretty modest budget for this, but either way, it had a box office earning of $50 million, and it actually was A24's highest grossing film until it was surpassed by Everything Everywhere All at Once in 2022. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know Uncut Gems was that much of a success for A24.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah, well deserved, I think. But
must be the Adam Sandler name drawing everybody in,
I guess. Yeah. It would be interesting to look up the comparison of the like the box office between Good Time and Uncut Gems, because
I was gonna ask actually for context, because Good Time was the film they made before this, correct? Mm-hmm. Good Time with Robert Pattinson. Was that their first film?
So I looked it up actually because I thought Good Time was their first film, but I wanted to like do research to make sure I was accurate in saying that. And I actually saw that they had directed a few features prior to this. So it was not their directorial debut. But yeah, for whatever reason, that was the one that kind of really put them on the map, probably because Robert Pattinson was a bigger name. But we will be talking about that movie on this podcast at some point, because it's also very good. And I think more stressful than this movie.
Very hard to imagine.
But yeah. So yeah, all of that being said, we can go ahead and jump into our plot conversation. So I was watching this movie and I don't remember, there was one other movie we talked about on this podcast that I think I said was similar, but I don't remember which one it was, which was Whiplash. In my brain, this movie is kind of just like one really long scene. Like there is for me, it doesn't really seem like, okay, this is part one, this is part two. It's just like, yeah, we're starting here and we're just going to keep sprinting until the end. So I just kind of wrote down bullet points of this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So we can kind of go through it that way and then stop where we feel like we need to and kind of just, discuss it from there, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds good. Because this movie is kind of hard because it's like, on the one hand, it is so much about the just vibes and the impending sense of stress that it's kind of hard to distinguish, to really afterwards sit down and say, this is how the plot worked. But at the same time, it is a movie that is so reliant on the actual movements of the characters and the deals they make and the decisions they make and the way every single thing in Howard's life is converging to basically bring him to his ultimate conclusion. And I was very impressed rewatching this movie with how all the different plot threads are weaving together constantly and how they intersect and how the decisions he makes are constantly pushing him forward and forward into, his ultimate doom, basically. I think this is a very well written movie. But yeah, all that is to say that's sort of simultaneously a very plotty movie, and yet it's very difficult afterwards to actually untangle and say, this is what the plot was.
I think it's a movie where, regardless of whether you understand what's going on or what's not going on, you can appreciate it either way. If you just sit back and you're like, this is way too complicated, I can't figure this out, you can still enjoy it. Or if you watch it and you're paying attention and you're like, oh, I'm connecting all the dots and this is leading to this, and you kind of understand it more, you still enjoy it. It's like either way, it's
basically the one key to understanding this movie is every time Howard has a decision to make, he makes the wrong decision. That's all you need to know.
But the thing is it does work out for him in the end, but also doesn't work out for him in the end.
Mm-hmm. Like which is the great tragic irony. He
does solve the problem, but it doesn't matter because
it's like multiple times in this movie I noticed this time around, there are points where it could have worked out for him and it could something finally could have gone right, but because he'd screwed up in some other area of his life, even though this one area is finally going okay, the other area is the thing that wrecks him and continues him on this path. And that's basically how the ending is. He keeps pushing it further and further and further until finally he can't push it any further.
Yeah, I actually noticed because so this is the first time I've watched this movie since I saw it for the first time a few years ago. And so there were just some things I was able to pick up on this time. And one of the things I noticed was in the beginning sequence after the colonoscopy, and we first start seeing Howard kind of doing his thing and answering phone calls and then going into work and, walking behind the counter and interacting with all these people. I was noticing, I was like, Howard looks really tired. He looks really exhausted and just like worn out. And I think that, once he gets the opal, that's when his energy is kind of up, and then he's up for the rest of the movie, basically. But the way that he starts out before he receives the opal and he just looks so drained gives me this idea of, this is just a cycle that he's constantly going through. Like, he might solve the problem, but then he creates another problem. And so this movie that we see is like one problem that gets solved by the end, but we know that it's just going to keep going and keep going and keep going, which is kind of the, not the tragedy of his character, but just, I don't know, recognizing that even if he does make the right decisions in the end to solve a problem, he's going to make wrong decisions again. And he's just an endless cycle of tired because he keeps wearing himself out, basically. But yeah, I don't know if you picked up on that performance, at least for me, like that note in the beginning of him seeming to be a lot more tired. But
no, I didn't pick up on it at the time, although I can see what you're saying now. It is very much like, not to armchair diagnose or anything like that, but that he's going through a sort of extended manic episode essentially throughout the entire movie, which is causing him to make all of these irrational decisions and to just kind of keep pushing himself forward even when it doesn't make any sense for the decisions that he's making.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely an addict. So
yeah, and like you're totally right that even if he had spoiler alert, even if he had survived at the end of the movie and gotten the money, things would not have ended well for him. He would not have gone off and spent that money reasonably and wisely and lived a happy life with why am I blanking on her name?
Who, his wife or
I'm thinking more his girlfriend, because she's
Julia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's what confused me. Julia Fox playing Julia.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he would not have gone on and had a happy life with Julia. Things would not have gone smoothly. He just would have probably placed an even larger bet or something like that, and it all would have, the cycle would have repeated again.
Yeah. So just kind of going to the sequence of events that start this movie off. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to start though by just quickly taking us through when you first saw this movie, or kind of what your relationship is to this movie? Any context about when you first saw it, that sort of thing?
Is that normally what we start with? Yep.
I have a small story about my own first viewing of this movie, so I figured you should probably start.
Yeah, I forgot that that's something we're supposed to do. So yes, thank you for that reminder. So yeah, my relationship to this movie is, like I said, this is my first rewatch. I did see it for the first time in theaters when it first came out. If I didn't see it with you, which you said last week, apparently we didn't. I saw it with another friend. And I remember him and I coming out of the theater and just being completely, pun not intended, but like completely blown away by what we had just seen. I had an idea of what I was going into because I had seen Good Time prior to this film. But for some reason, I didn't fully expect it to be what it was. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I remember just being incredibly, incredibly stressed out, but also just completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Impressed by Adam Sandler's performance. I just feel like he is phenomenal in this film. Him and KG just blow me out of the water. And he really carries this movie. I mean, if he had not pulled it off, the whole movie would not have worked. And I think Adam Sandler is incredibly fascinating because we all know he's not always in the best movies. And I would say more often than not, his movies that he's in are not very good. But every once in a while, he pulls out these roles and he shows us that he actually can really, really act. And yeah, I think he's great in this film. So yeah, it's just a movie where I came out of it and I was like, this was such a unique experience for me. I've never felt this type of stress and anxiety and suspense when watching a movie other than with Good Time. So yeah, that's kind of my relationship with it. I enjoyed it despite the fact that I was super stressed out. And also it's kind of funny too in certain ways. But yeah, anyway, that's my relationship with it. How about you? I know you, as you've hinted at, you have some sort of story with this that I don't know what it is. I don't think I've heard this story. So
you probably have. It's not that exciting a story at all. It's just that, so I have a lower tolerance for stress than you do. This is something we've discussed many times. I only saw this movie because I'm pretty sure you had seen it and you were telling me how great it was. And you're like, you have to see this movie. You have to see this movie. So I went to see it. I don't think I had fully prepared myself for what it would be like. Within the first 10 minutes, I think it was right about the time when KG first decides he's going to take the opal off of Howard's hands. Mm-hmm. I was so incredibly stressed out in the theater. And so what I did, and for the record, I do not endorse this. Do not do this. Do not copy me.
What is this? I've never heard this story.
So I'm building it up. It's really not that exciting a story.
She went outside, she took drugs, and
I took 10 tranquilizers just to get through this movie. So the theater I was in my own defense, it was not very full, and there was no one else in my row. The row behind me, the seats, there's a very sort of sharp drop between each level, so the levels were very different, so it's kind of difficult to see down and to see the people in the row in front of you. And only because of that, I took out my phone 10 minutes into the movie and I Googled the plot summary of Uncut Gems, and I read the entire Wikipedia page so that I would know exactly what was going to happen and exactly how it was. Tatum was shaking her head, as she should.
Because you do this all the time.
Not normally in a theater.
Not in a theater, but yes.
I don't handle suspense. I don't handle certain types of suspense very well. And this is exactly the type of movie that I don't deal very well with. But yeah, 10 minutes in, I had to Google the plot summary and read what was going to happen. And so I would know the ending and I would know what we were working toward. And once I did that, it was a much better experience. Yeah, this movie, I came out of it and I was like, that was the most stressful experience of my life. I'm never going to see this movie again. I'm glad I saw it because it's really good, but I'm never going to see it again. And then it's one of those movies where it just starts working your way into your brain. And about 2 weeks later, I was like, huh, actually, I kind of do want to watch that movie.
It's quite
again.
good. Yep.
It is. It's really good. So I was happy to have a chance to rewatch it, and it was much better on the second watch, knowing
interesting
what I was getting into. This movie, the vibe of it is so strange because it is so stressful and everyone is talking at the same time and everyone is swearing at 10,000 words a minute and yelling at each other and people are making bad decisions. But it's also weirdly soothing in a way, maybe because of it's just constant noise and stimulation and chaos and beautiful colored lights and New York City. I don't know. There's something about it. The soundtrack too, that kind of electronic score, it's very hypnotic. And so I was watching it late at night last night and I wasn't like falling asleep or anything like that because the movie is constantly shouting at you. But I did find it weirdly soothing.
Interesting.
So yeah, I can definitely see this being a movie that I will rewatch more.
To fall asleep? Geneva's going to put it on before bedtime.
Just background noise.
Yeah.
It's my new white noise machine.
There's nothing like hearing 500 fucks before you go to sleep.
Yeah, no, it's just, you know how there's some movies where it's like, it's not soothing in the sense of like, it's going to put you to sleep, but it's soothing in the sense that there's stimulation in my brain and I just need to kind of get on the level of something else in order to even me out. I don't know if I'm describing that very well, but for some reason I found that on the second watch, this movie really worked for me in that. So yeah, that was my experience watching this movie.
That is
I learned
so
some things about myself. Yeah.
That was like a 180 from your first experience to your second. First experience, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. I can't handle it. Where's this going? To second watch, this is real soothing. Wow. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I don't think had heard that story, but maybe I did and just forgot. I'm sorry if I recommended it to you and didn't prepare you, but
I'm pretty sure when you recommended it, you said it's so stressful, but it's so good.
It's very stressful. But at the same time, you having a good time? Yes. Oh, speaking of which, I did want to say, I don't know if you've watched this or rewatched it or anything, but in my brain, I have this just kind of weird library of favorite movie trailers, and I just look them up from time to time just to watch them. Uncut Gems has one of my favorite movie trailers of all time. It's really, really good. It's okay.
I'm going to look it up right after this. I don't remember. I'm sure I've seen the trailer for this, but I don't remember it specifically.
This might be weird, but I probably watch it like once every couple months. It's a really good trailer. There's so many bad trailers out there that when they're actually good, it's an art form, really. It's like, how do you take this hour and a half plus film and boil it down into 2 minutes in a way that's interesting, but doesn't give away too much?
I was trying to convince some friends of mine to watch The Green Knight, which is a movie that Tatum and I both adore.
That trailer is so good.
Okay, so this is the thing, is that we looked up the trailer, but the first one they played was not the teaser, which is the really good one. It's a later trailer, which is not as good. Okay. And so we watched the whole thing, and then at the end of it, I said, I'm so sorry. That was not the good version. We gotta watch the other one. We gotta watch the teaser.
Yes. That's actually another trailer that I watch every few months. That's on my list. It's a really good freaking trailer.
It's really good. Yeah. Anyone who's listening, if you've not seen the original teaser for The Green Knight, go look it up.
When the music builds and you have the giants, then the camera flips upside. Oh my gosh. It's so good. Yeah. Also, watch that movie. Watch the trailer and then watch the movie. And then
watch the teaser and then just watch The Green Knight, Can't go wrong.
And then Geneva and I will talk about it on this podcast at some point. Anyway,
it's a Christmas movie. We got to do it around Christmas. The look you're giving me. It is a Christmas movie.
Okay. I don't connect the dots there, but let's talk about that at another time.
Their Christmas, maybe it's a New Year's movie, but it is explicitly a holiday gathering in which the Green Knight shows up.
Again,
the look on Tatum's face cannot be described. She looks so skeptical.
There's just movies that are called Christmas movies that I'm like, okay, just because there's snow doesn't mean it's Christmas. Not that this is one of those movies. Anyway, we haven't even started yet. We barely talked about this movie, I feel like. But okay, so just to kind of start with this movie. So I remember when I first saw this in the theater, I was very confused. I thought I was in the wrong film because I was just like, okay, it's a bunch of people that are clearly not in New York City that are walking in the wilderness somewhere, and now they're inside of a cave. But then once they started actually, mining and things like that, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Now I know I'm in the right place. But I just remember seeing that in the theater and genuinely being like, oh, I think I'm in the wrong theater. I need to get up and walk out. But yeah, so I just wrote down, because I think I've mentioned before, I love how movies begin and kind of introducing you to the characters, introducing you to the tone. And so I wrote down in the opening sequence, I don't know how long it is, but it's a few minutes before KG actually walks in. This is how many things we have happen. We have the colonoscopy, then we have Adam Sandler. Then we have Howard go to work, and then the mob people come in and kind of beat him up a little bit and say, where's my money? Where's my money? And then he's like, oh, I'll go get it. And then he leaves. Then he has a phone call. And then he goes to his second apartment where we meet Julia. And then we find out he has kids. And then he leaves. And then he starts betting on basketball. And then after that, he goes back to work. Okay, I'm literally writing all these things. Oh, yeah. So then he goes to bet on basketball after selling something. And then he goes back to work, and there's a fight outside of his job that are the bodyguards of KG. And then he goes inside, and then he meets KG. So within like the first 5 minutes of this movie, we have like 6 different locations, so many different people that we're meeting. Howard's running around on the phone, yelling, talking to these people, getting beat up. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is what this movie is going to be.
Can I just say, I feel so sorry for whatever poor schmuck has to be Howard's accountant, because I do not understand how his business model works. That man is never in the office.
Accountant. I don't think he has an accountant.
I don't understand how he makes any sales whatsoever.
The fish are his accountants. But then Lakeith kills them.
His books just they get by on vibes.
Honestly, I wonder if maybe that guy who quits at one point is the guy who does the books. He's like, a lot of other people would love to have me come work for them. You're just totally disregarding my value. He seems like the most
sane and reasonable person in that office, so probably.
Yeah.
Which is also why he quits.
We have the guy in the back who fixes the watches, the repair guy.
That's true. Yeah, he's reasonable enough to stay out of the way.
He minds his own business. He's like, hey, I just fix the watches. I don't sell them. But anyway, yeah. And so I don't know. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts about that opening sequence of kind of the colonoscopy and then hitting the ground, freaking running, and then meeting KG and all of that? Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, even before we're introduced to Howard, I just wanted to say a moment of appreciation for that opening of the discovery of the opal in Ethiopia. I think just opening it with a reminder of what these gems are and the human cost that it takes to excavate them. And the fact that we open with a sort of, even though there's not any sort of mystical dimension to it, this idea that already 2 seconds into the movie, this opal has already caused extreme damage and human suffering. There's a guy who has seemingly lost or has had extreme damage done to his leg we don't know what happens to him. But yeah, just from the very outset, these jewels are causing nothing but pain and awfulness. And I love the way that it goes from the discovery of the opal. We dive into the depths of it, and it's beautiful, it's ethereal, there's all these different colored lights, and then we're kind of gliding along what appears to be a cave, and it's glistening, and it appears to be encrusted with diamonds. We don't really know what it is. And then it becomes clear that it's the inside of someone's colon. And just the dark humor of it, but also the what really is it saying? It's sort of, making this equation between diamonds, wealth, and the colon, the rectum, poop, also, yeah, I mean, a colonoscopy, obviously it's trying to make sure that there are no signs of impending illness and doom. Also, I mean, I just had this random thought of and maybe this is me just getting a little bit too mini philosophical or thinking way too hard about this for a second, but just that idea of the preciousness of a human life and how much we fight to preserve a human being's life, and how that gets weighed against a jewel, and how this jewel is changing hands at the expense of so many lives. Yeah, I don't know. I just had a lot of thoughts just from those opening 2-3 minutes or so. So again, just brilliant writing. And then, as you said, there's just insane, as soon as Howard shows up, it's an insane fast pace. We're bouncing from place to place. Howard apparently can never stay in the same place for more than 2 seconds at a time. And we're setting up so many different plot threads that are going to play out through the rest of the movie. It's really, really great, strong, clever writing.
Yeah, we're going to get into this a little bit at the end, but I find it to be very frustrating that this movie was not recognized at an award level for its screenwriting, for its acting, for its editing. I think it's really
so many things. Its score should have been recognized. Yeah, so many things.
It's really a shame. I looked up, and we can get into this later when we talk about awards and stuff, but yeah, I did some research to kind of refresh my memory on what was it going up against that year. And this movie really should have been nominated for some stuff. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it's funny that it's interesting that you mention kind of about, the beauty of this stone, and then weighing that against, the value of human life and things like that. And one thing that I picked up on during this rewatch is, it's really, I feel like the value of this opal, it really is this idea of the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Because I feel like everyone puts a different value on this stone depending on what they want it to be. And so Howard wants it to be this over $1 million stone because he just wants to make money. And then we have KG looking at it as if it's like this god, like it's this magical entity that can grant him wishes almost. He's rubbing it, he's looking at it before games, he's giving thanks to it when he wins. He treats it as this godlike figure almost. And then we have the people who are in charge of this auction who are just like, yeah, it's $200,000, whatever. And then we have the part of this quote that we said at the beginning of this episode where KG's literally saying, so you paid these Ethiopian people $100,000 for something that you're trying to sell for $1 million. And then Howard is like, yeah, but $100,000 is everything to them. That's way more money than they'll ever have. Like, they should be thanking me. This is my way of winning. This is your way of winning. This is their way of winning. And so I feel like the first time I watched it, I was so caught up in the stress of everything that it was more so like, how is Howard navigating this, and how is he going to fix this, and how is he going to get out of this? Oh my gosh. Whereas this time around, I was more so noticing just kind of the theme and the role that the stone actually plays, and how all of these things that are ensuing, all of these things that are happening, is just because people are looking at a rock and thinking it is something that it is or isn't, but it's because of how they see this thing that causes all of this chaos. And so I don't know. I guess maybe that should have been obvious on the first watch, but this time around I was really seeing like the stone is the motivator behind all of this. It's not just Howard doing these things for no reason. It's because of anyway. But yeah, I just found that to be super interesting.
Yeah. Well, they say right in for a lot of gambling addicts, it's not about a specific amount of money that you're trying to win. It's about the pursuit. It's about the high, the thrill. And it's so significant that the gem in this movie, it is an uncut gem. It is about a gem that is not fully formed. It doesn't actually exist with a set dollar amount. It's about the potential, the potentiality that it has. It's about what it could be worth. So for Howard, he has these grand visions about this is the gem that is going to solve all of my problems. It's going to get me out of debt. It's going to get me into the life that I think I deserve. And for Kevin Garnett, it's about, it's this gem that represents the idea of winning and the idea of, this is this lucky sort of totem or something that can bring me into the achievement and the glory that I want. It's not the value of the thing itself. It's the value that everyone is putting onto it.
Yeah. And I think another thing I noticed this time around is the first time when, he goes to the auction and the opal gets appraised and they say initially it's $250,000 worth or something like that. And then they lower it, obviously, because he pisses them off. The first time I watched it, I had this idea of, oh, the reason they're appraising it at such a low price is because they're trying to rip him off. But this time around, I'm like, I don't think they're trying to rip him off. I think that his idea of how much this thing is worth is so over the top that he's just delusional, And so I found it interesting how this time around I saw it differently, which I think is probably the right way to see it at this point. But yeah, just me recognizing that he thought it was worth this much. And then the people who actually do this for a living, and they don't have any reason to appraise it for something that it's not really. They're the ones who are telling you that it's actually a quarter of what you, if not less of what you thought it was going to be. And it really is just Howard is his own worst enemy, and he just gets caught up in all of these things. And I think that, talking about how this movie is an interesting combination of humor and stress and all of these different things. I don't think it's a coincidence. Yes, I mean, it's very funny, but I think the fact that the first time that Howard holds the opal in his hands, he says, "Holy shit, I'm going to come." Like, I think it says a lot about, I mean, yes, obviously it's very funny, but it says a lot about just who he is and how he values these things and how it makes him feel when he gets these things in his hands and he's actually holding them, of just like, wow, this is not just, oh, look, I can get money, or this is a cool stone. It's like, this is huge, and yeah, I just think that line is brilliant in establishing his character and kind of where we're going from here,
Yeah. So much of this movie is about just the relentless pursuit of desire, of more, without really understanding or defining what that more is or what the cost is to get there. Even the characters, even the non-Howard characters, his wife, his kids, they're living this very materialistic lifestyle, and they're not as messed up as Howard is, but there is this kind of gloss and shallowness and materialistic pursuit to the lifestyles of pretty much everyone in this movie. And Howard is kind of the extreme end of it. But I think it's sort of the extreme that shows, the sort of human, the human common pursuit that so many of us have and so many of us can fall prey to.
Yeah. So kind of going from that, I have a question. I think I wrote down this question while I was watching it, and I was like, I'm genuinely not sure. And I think maybe I formed an answer by the end, but I would love to hear your thoughts. So in this opening part, when Howard first gives the opal to KG, first of all, what do you think his motivation was in bringing it out in the first place? Because we have that whole scene where he's going on and on and on about this stone and all of these things. And then KG's like, "Can I have it?" And he says no. And then KG responds with, why would you show me this and take it out if you're not going to let me have it?
Which is a great line and has kind of become a meme. And it's such a great delivery.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, interesting. But yeah, so I was watching this and I was like, what was Howard's motivation? Because his response is, oh, I just got excited because I got this thing. And I'm like, are you actually that stupid? Is that actually what your thought was? Oh, I'm really excited. I'm going to take it out and talk to you about it, but not let you have it. But the alternative is you took it out to let him have it, for him to bring it back. And he obviously spins it in a way where he's like, hey, I want you to tag me on social media and take these pictures and post it. But it almost seems like an afterthought. And so what is your read on that sequence? What was Howard's motivation for bringing the opal out? Did he intend to have KG take it for social? Like, what is your read on that? That whole scenario?
My read, I think, is just that Howard has no impulse control and no filter. And if the opal had not arrived when KG was there, none of this would have happened. But it did arrive when he was there, and he was so excited that he couldn't resist showing it to people and bragging about it. And, maybe there is that sort of in the back of his mind, like, I'm a business owner. It's good for me to, kind of, if I have celebrity clients, it's good for me to be publicizing the things that I have, especially this thing's going up for auction. It'd be good to spread the word. But I don't think it's a whole lot deeper than just he's a person who is so, he's coming apart at the seams. Any good sense that he might have had has just been worn away by all of this stress and whatever kind of episode he's going through. And yeah, I think it arrives. He's so excited he can't keep it to himself, and it turns out to be a big mistake.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think it's interesting to see how, like I said before, when we first see him, he seems very tired, and then when the opal arrives, he's up, and he's just paying for that the rest of the.
Well, and I think too, like, the opal, I think is. I mean, I think we've already said this, but the opal, I think, is kind of his last-ditch plan to dig himself out of the hole that he's found himself in. He's pinned everything, all of his hopes, all of his, every sort of rescue plan that he has. He's pinning it all on the opal. That's probably the only thing that's been occupying his thoughts for the past couple of weeks. And so when it comes, it's just he can't contain it. He's got to let it out. He's like, my rescue plan is finally here, and it's so beautiful, and I'm going to look at it, I'm going to show it to everybody, and and that's, things unravel from there. Yeah, I mean, I wrote down, which I think all of us knew the first time we watched this movie, the second he hands over that opal, we're all just like, this is not gonna go well. This is when it's so well filmed, the way that, and again, Kevin Garnett's performance is so good. You just buy that he's instantly so sucked into it, and the way the camera lingers on the little flecks of the gem that are coming out from underneath the rock are just so, like, the prop itself is beautifully created. And the way the camera kind of just zooms into it, you feel like you could just dive into the depths of that jewel. You understand why he's sucked in, because it's feels like there could be anything in there, You're everything, the best thing possible, the greatest moment of your life could be inside that gem if you could just get inside it. You get all of that through the direction, through Kevin Garnett's performance.
Well, the first time he looks at the stone, the camera does dive into it, and we see flashes of his past. We see pictures of him as a kid, and like his ancestors and all these things coming up to present day. And so, yeah, I mean, in addition, so that combination of the filmmaking choices of the Safdie brothers with the expressions on KG's face and his acting performance, you really believe that he is all in on this. Like, he's mesmerized by it. He's hypnotized by it, and which kind of adds this layer of, he's not bringing this back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Are you kidding me? No. And so,
he's got to have it. Yeah,
he's got to have it. Yeah. And the only thing that kind of made me a little bit less of like, maybe he'll bring it back tomorrow morning, even though I knew he wouldn't, was the fact that he gave his championship ring to Howard. I was like, okay, so there is some form of exchange of goods here. And the fact that Lakeith Stanfield's character was trying to make it so that KG didn't have to give Howard something. He was like, no, he's good for it. But then KG was like, no, that's fair. That's fair. You know, I'll give you something to hold on to. We'll do a little swippity swap, you know.
We gotta talk about Damani. He's such a fascinating character.
And then, of course, Howard goes and pawns the ring like immediately. He's like, oh yeah, you know what would be a great thing? To go put this somewhere, hopefully get money from it to pay these guys off, and then I can take the ring back and just like, what is your plan here, dude? Like, what are you doing?
The way this man's mind works. Yeah.
It's like, even for a con person, there's probably a simpler way that you could go about this rather than, oh yeah, I'm going to trade it for this ring, take this ring to this place, have them hold it till Friday, then get the money and then get it back and then trade it for this. I'm like, dude, there's probably some other way to do this that's less complicated. But anyway, but yeah, before we move too far forward, we can go ahead and talk about Damani if you want. Sounds like you had specific thoughts there.
Yeah, I find him such an interesting character because he's so actually, if you have thoughts on him, go ahead, because like, actually, how do I even form my thoughts?
I actually don't have any thoughts on him, so yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll talk about him later when he intersects with the narrative more. Okay,
cool. The only thought I have on him is that Lakeith Stanfield is one of my favorite actors working today. He just is.
Yeah, he's terrific. There's one particular moment, and I can't remember exactly where it happens, but it's definitely later in the narrative where he just has this acting moment, and I really want to pick it out. Hopefully I can remember when we get to it. But anyway, we'll talk about it later.
Okay. But yeah, so I guess moving forward then a little bit, after this, after he takes the ring to the pawn shop, Howard does go home. And we get to see him kind of interact with his wife for the first time. And he's
played by Idina Menzel.
Adele Dazeem. Excuse me.
Adele Dazeem herself. Who's great in this movie.
Will never get old. Like, it will never get old for me.
The poor woman.
But yeah, so we have him. So he pawns the ring, then he takes that money and bets it on the game. And then he goes home and is like religiously watching this game at home and da-da-da-da-da. And his wife... Completely
ignoring his family.
And his wife is like, go tell your son goodnight. He's like, okay, after this game. And then, you know, he waits and waits and waits until she forces him to go. So actually, I'll finish summarizing this sequence real quick. So then he ends up going to sit by his son's bedside as he's falling asleep. He's watching the game on his phone the entire time. And then after his son is asleep, he goes to his other son's bedroom and watches the game in there. And then after he leaves his son in that room, he goes back to his wife, who's sitting on the couch, who's watching something, who he then proceeds to beg her to switch the channel to the baseball game, or to the basketball game. So very clearly, even though he's at home, he's not really present and at home. He is very much so still working, still stressed out, still caught up in all of these things. So I have a kind of a starting question for this, and then if we want to talk more about it, we can. But I found it to be really interesting, just the thought of what is the backstory to this marriage? What is it between Howard and Dinah that got them to actually get married? Because I look at them and I'm like, how did it seems like she never liked him, but because I don't see her being a past Julia and then becoming who she is now, but maybe she was. I don't know. Maybe he was more stable when he was younger. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of like their backstory?
I definitely get the sense throughout the movie that Howard, even though he's always had these tendencies, these are things that have been kind of building up over the last few months. Like over the last few months is really
interesting. Okay.
Like maybe he's been a gambling addict for years, but I think things have really come to a head in the relatively recently. In the sense that, and they explicitly say in the movie that the thing that has caused them to decide to divorce is that she discovered the existence of Julia in the other apartment. which seems like it happened not too long ago. So the sense that I get is that Howard was not always this way. He was probably once a much more stable person. Maybe, probably a lot more charming, and he has a business that has apparently been extremely successful, so that he could have a beautiful house on Long Island and a really nice apartment in Manhattan. Like that man at one point must have been raking in the money.
That apartment is not cheap.
Yeah. So I think he was much more successful. She was probably attracted to that. He was probably a lot more stable and charming, and I think there was probably a point, they were probably pretty young when they got married as well. Like, I could just see there being a previous phase in their lives where their lives and their relationship looked very different to where it is now. But I think because his gambling addiction has gotten so out of control, there may be other things going on with him mentally. They've just drifted apart, and she's just gotten to the point where she really can't stand the sight of him anymore, and understandably, the way he treats her and the way he treats the family. And it is so fascinating. Sorry, this is not related to your original question. That's okay. But I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on to what extent during the film he will make what seems like he will make an effort to reach out to a member of his family, to reach out to Dinah, or to reach out to one of the kids and try and connect with them, and they just push him away. To what extent do you think that's a really genuine attempt to reach out? To what extent do you think it's a kind of cry for help? To what extent do you think it's maybe he feels like he should say something now, but he doesn't really know how to? It's not actually genuine. I don't know. What do you make of his relationship to his family?
Yeah, I love that question. I think... So I have two different thoughts on that. My first thought is, as far as the family, the idea of having a family, I feel like that's what he likes. He likes the idea of having a family. But when it comes to actually having to be a part of that family, it doesn't seem like he actually likes what it is. So I think he's idealized a lot of things. I don't think he actually wants a family, but I think he wants to want a family. But the fact that he has one means that he has to engage with it somehow. And so I think in the ways that he does engage with it, they do feel genuine to me. I do think that particularly the scene with his daughter, it does seem like he genuinely wants to connect with her. And with his son, it seems like when he's playing basketball with him, he's like, oh, this is someone in my family who's also interested in this thing. We can bond over this. And when they go to the apartment later in the episode, it does seem like he's trying to protect his son from the reality of, there's someone else living in this apartment. And when his son finds out, obviously he's very upset by it. His relationship with Dinah, I don't know if that's as genuine. I think that's a little bit more going back to that ideal of, oh, I like the idea of having a wife and I like the idea of having a family. So I think that's maybe a confusing answer to your question, but I don't think he wants a family. I think he wants to want a family, but the fact that he has one with the relationships that he does have within that family, it does seem like he genuinely wants to connect with his kids, but doesn't know how. And his wife, that seems like he just likes the idea of having a wife, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's very insightful. I think he is someone who he has just gotten so used to the idea that all of the relationships in his life are transactional. And so that's how he approaches them all. And that's how he approaches even what might be, at least in part, a very genuine attempt to connect to his kids. It comes across now, because he has done it so many times, as our transactional relationship is going to be once a month I'm going to ask you how you're doing, and that's going to be my contributions as a dad, and that's the extent of it, And so it's difficult to even tell to what extent it's genuine anymore, because I think they've just gotten so in the pattern of he's not there, then the 2 seconds that he is there, he's going to ask one question and it's not really going to be intended. He's not really going to care about the answer, and that's just the way that their relationship works.
Yeah, and I think that definitely plays out in that kitchen scene that he has with his daughter, where she's very clearly like, I'm just going to give you very flippant one word answers to your questions because I know that you asked me these same questions a month ago and a month before that. And it's going to be the same, you don't actually care to talk to me. And this is pure speculation, but I suspect that she knows that he's cheating. And she's aware of that. And so that probably taints her perspective as well.
There's a really fascinating glance in that scene between Dinah and I want to say Marcel. Is that his daughter's name?
No clue.
I don't remember. His daughter and his wife, where it's like the two of them kind of sharing this like, he's around, gotta just put up with it until until he's not anymore. And you just get this sense from that one glance. You get the sense of they have an entire life and an entire world that does not include him because he's intentionally not included himself in it. And so when he's there, he's intruding on their space.
Or he's put himself into situations where he can't participate. Like even with the theater show, granted, I feel like he would have much rather been somewhere else, but he went because he felt like he had to. But even when he did go, he couldn't even be there because there's people lurking in the back of the room, which then, of course, he ends up naked in a trunk of his car, and it's just...
Which I'm like, just wait till it's over. Like, they're not going to jump you in the middle of the performance. Like, you don't need to confront them now.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I like the concept that they add his family into this because I think it adds more layers to his character. And we see, again, talking about, the value of human lives and the value of stones and money and all of these things. We really just see a lot of like, what is actually important in life? What is valuable in life? Is that a universal thing or does it change depending on the person? Does it matter? Does it not? And yeah, I also, can I just say, I can't even imagine someone saying this to me. It seems so cruel, but at the same time, Howard seems so disconnected that it might not even really be computing in his brain. But when Dinah laughs at him and is like, your face is so stupid, I'm just like, it's kind of funny.
So cutting.
It's kind of funny, but also like,
but yeah,
because that's something where it's like, he can't change his face like that,
I mean, you could shave that goatee. That's a pretty terrible goatee.
Can you imagine his character without the goatee though? It wouldn't work. I feel like,
no, it's an essential, great hair and costuming choice.
So good. The earrings with the glasses and the necklace. And it's, man, talk about great costuming. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Well, and it's so fascinating then to contrast his relationship with his family with his relationship with Julia, because, on the surface, they do very much have that sort of transactional relationship where it's, it's the classic, she's the mistress, he pays for her apartment and her clothes, and he comes home to her whenever he wants and they have sex, and that's kind of what their relationship is. But throughout the movie, she does kind of genuinely end up being the only person in his life who actually cares about him
She kind of likes him.
Yeah, she actually has. I feel anyway that she would, even if he didn't get the money at the end, even if he wasn't who he was, she would still want to be with him. I do not know why, but she does seem to have this genuine affection for him. And I don't think he feels the same way about her. I think that he very much views her in the same way that he views everyone else, which is, I will pay attention to you when you're useful to me, and when you're not, you don't exist. Any slight against me, I'm going to cut you out of my life. But if I cheat on you or treat you badly, you're just supposed to accept it. Like, that's just his default way of treating everyone in his life. But she does seem to, with no strings attached, have some sort of actual affection for him. And so it is really fascinating and, again, kind of tragic to see then how, even that one area of his life is ultimately screwed up as well. She is one route that could be a way back into a more healthy, stable pattern, but because of the decisions he makes, that doesn't end up happening.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning, because we were talking before about, the school play, and he probably doesn't want to be there, but he goes, and even when he's there, he can't participate. I think it's worth mentioning that he's also late to the play because he goes back to his apartment to be with Julia, and we have that whole scene where he's in the closet and he's texting her and yada, yada, yada.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that's when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because of that whole encounter that he ends up being late to this play. And also to your point, where I do think that she does like him. And I think that, at least in my opinion, I think we see that a lot in that scene where he's in the closet texting her, because she looks into it. I feel like a mistress who's not into their, whatever you call the guy that she's with, would just kind of be like rolling their eyes. And of course he wants this picture or whatever. But she's sitting there and she's like, oh, I'm going to change. I'm going to set this up. I'm going to, let me look cute while I lay on the couch. Like, I think it's really interesting how, I don't know, she genuinely seems like she likes him. And I don't think he completely dislikes her. I think there's a part of him that likes her as well.
I think he likes her. I just don't think that he's in a mental place where he can really see anyone else. And I say that as if I'm taking all the blame off of him, which I'm not. Like, he is very much to blame for the way he treats people, but I just don't think right now he's capable of really seeing anyone else as a human being, or putting their thoughts and desires and needs before his own, or considering anything from another point of view. I think he's just completely blocked out all sort of that empathy and self-sacrifice and kindness, and I think he's just all of those things are not really within his grasp when we're experiencing him during the movie. And so I think he likes her, but he likes her because of the things that she can give him, the sex, the sense of status of dating a younger hot woman, that sort of thing.
I think she also helps him access himself. I feel like I feel like he's more emotional around her than he is with other people. With other people, he just seems like, okay, I'm yelling at you because I have to get this thing and I need this from you and I got to go here and oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like with her, he's actually more vulnerable, in my opinion, and not deceptively so. He seems to be like, okay, this is, we have that line at the end where she's like, you can come home to me, like you're my home, and anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead with that, but so just to kind of, I'm going to catch us up in terms of the plot, because I just really like saying kind of the progression and how quickly it goes from one thing to the next. So, he gives KG the opal, he gets the ring, then he goes to pawn the ring, then he uses that money to bet it on a game, and then he's watching this game with his family when he goes home, and then he actually ends up winning the bet. So then after he wins the bet, he doesn't, he's not late to the school play because of being with Julia. But anyway, so he wins the bet, he wants to celebrate. So then he goes to meet Julia, they have sex. And then after that, the next day or whenever it is, we're at the theater. He goes to this show, which he then has to leave because these hitmen, not hitmen, but like these the
collectors,
who are like following him around. They take him in the back, they throw him in the car, they get mad at him for resurfacing his swimming pool with the money that they should have used to pay him back.
Understandable. They have some points.
Yeah, I love when Howard's like, I never resurfaced anything. I don't know who said that.
The way we don't know for sure that he's lying, but you're pretty sure that
he definitely resurfaced his swimming pool.
Like he breathes throughout the entire movie. But the way he's just so like, I feel like he just believes, the things that come out of his mouth. Yeah.
He's totally delusional. So they basically tell him, you owe us money. He's like, okay. Then they end up taking his clothes off. They put him in the trunk of the car. Then
one important note is we find out during the sequence that Arno, the man that he owes money to,
is his brother-in-law.
Well, is his brother-in-law, one, but two, because he heard about the fact that Howard bet got some money and then immediately betted on something else. Arno stopped the bet. So the money that Howard won from that basketball game, he's not going to get.
Right. Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. Very important point. Thank you for saying that. So then, yes, he's locked in the trunk, naked. Dinah comes out, gets him. Can't even imagine how humiliating that is. Then we go home. We have that scene with Howard and his daughter, where clearly she's talking to her friend on the phone about how embarrassing it was that he was found naked in the trunk of a car. And then after that, Howard decides to leave. He goes to a concert where The Weeknd is performing, which
so
is
much The Weeknd in this movie. I had forgotten about that.
It's a strange addition to me. I am not a fan of The Weeknd. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not a fan of The Weeknd. But anyway, so he's supposed to meet up with Damani there, who's supposed to give him the opal. Of course he doesn't have it. And so yeah. So then Howard goes and then he finds Julia in a closet. She's doing coke, but probably more with Weeknd in the closet.
Well, it's so interesting because we see her reject his, like, he keeps wanting to do things. He keeps trying to make out with her and she's like, no. And she doesn't do nothing. Like she's feeling him up. But, you know, again, she does seem to genuinely, to the extent that she can while she's extremely high on coke, be trying to stay faithful to Howard. Yeah. Her character is fascinating.
Yeah. So anyway, they get into a huge argument because Howard is like, how dare you be in the closet with
closet
The
doing
Weeknd.
coke with The Weeknd.
Yeah.
We've all been there, Howard.
Yep. And so anyway, we have all of that happen. And then I'm trying to sort through my notes here. This plot is very confusing. I wrote things down. Yeah. So then the next thing I have is, I think this is the next morning. Howard goes to work. KG comes to return the opal, but Howard doesn't have the ring. So then KG leaves because he's like, I
forgot about that. Oh.
Yes. So then KG leaves. He keeps the opal because Howard doesn't have the ring. And Howard's like, Damani, how dare you come here and not tell me you're coming? I didn't have time to go get the ring, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that doesn't work out. Then we have our scene where they have the Passover Seder dinner, where Howard has to participate in the in the proceedings, which he clearly doesn't want to do.
He's reading off the plagues, which feels thematically appropriate.
Yep. And then after that, we have the kind of confrontation between Howard and Dinah, where he's like, give me another chance. And Dinah laughs at him and says, your face is so stupid.
This is also where we knew that Howard had some sort of connection with Arno, but I think this is where we really discover that they are actually family. They're not they don't just have a business relationship. They have a family relationship, which is one of the reasons that Arno has been so uncomfortable and so acted so weird in all of their confrontations before. He's been like, don't say my name. And it's because they have this family relationship.
I think we also learned that this is kind of a not a family business, but the concept of just kind of dealing things and trying to trick the system to get money. It seems to be a family thing because they're having this whole conversation where it's Howard, his brother-in-law, I think the guy is his uncle, all of these people, they're all kind of like, oh, really? What about this? Blah, blah, blah. They all seem to kind of speak this lingo. So to me, it seems clear that Howard is not the only one who has this disease, who has this addiction. It's kind of something where blind leading the blind type of thing. And I think we see earlier with Howard's son, how he's kind of interested in learning the tricks of all of these things. And, oh, I'm super fascinated in what you're doing. How much money did you get for this, that, and the other? So I think it's interesting. It's
very much this sort of subculture that Howard has grown up in, and like his entire world is contained within this subculture of like a lot of businessmen and hustlers, basically.
Yeah. So seemingly after this evening, it appears that Howard and Dinah are still going to be getting a divorce. I don't think that they will be staying together after this.
Well, definitely not after the end of the movie.
Well, this is true.
Sorry.
No, that's a very good point. But yeah, and so then after this, you know, they go to the apartment. The son finds out that Howard has a mistress. He's very upset by it. All of those things. So then
go ahead.
Sorry,
I just wanted to say we didn't mention this when we were talking about his family, but the small subplot throughout the movie of his son, the older of the two sons, the way that he idolizes Howard and seems to hang on every bit of information he can get out of him. You know, when Howard is watching the game with him, he mentions that he bet some money and the kid's like, how much? It was a lot, right? You know, and even though Howard won't tell him how much, he's like, it's a lot, right? Like, he just idolizes everything about Howard and his lifestyle. But this moment being that moment where it's sort of, you know, the classic growing up moment of realizing your parents are flawed. They're not the heroes that you think they are. They're actually, you know, deeply flawed people who have secrets and have things that they're not proud of. I think it's a small subplot, but I think it's very well played.
Yeah, we've kind of hinted at this, but I just want to say it as a whole. The casting in this movie is phenomenal. Everyone from top to bottom, I feel like, is so fitting for their role. I think who they cast as his daughter, who they cast as his son, his uncle, his brother-in-law, all of these people, the casting, I believe all of their performances, and I believe that all of them are these people. And even this young boy, who I think is teenager, maybe preteen, he gives this really, it's very brief. He's not on camera very often, but I believe everything about him, and I think he gives a great performance. So shout out to the casting director of this movie. I think that there should be, not that this movie was nominated for anything, period, but I think in general, award ceremonies should start having awards for casting directors and for cast ensembles. But that's, you know, tangent. But anyway, so yeah, so after this, the next day we have, they go to I forgot them going to basketball practice and blah, 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 blah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's kind of important too, because so Howard shows up.
That's why he's late to the theater performance, because they have to drive 2 hours and then 2 hours back to get the.
Well, yes. It's like, so Howard shows up to the auction house where he's supposed to drop off the jewels so he can get appraised. He's supposed to meet the Damani there because Damani's supposed to drop it off, but instead Damani drives up and says, KG still got the opal. So Howard demands that they drive 2 hours down to Philly. The second they walk into practice, Howard immediately embarrasses Damani. He's just like running around and stealing basketballs and horsing around. And so what Damani does is, instead of actually doing what he said he was going to do and taking him to KG, he just walks off, and Howard gets stopped by security and has to take the bus back to New York.
I forgot about the bus. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So, you know, yet another missed opportunity that's purely caused by Howard's own, you know, inability to control his own impulses.
Right. Yes. So thinking about that, I'm going to correct what I said before. When KG comes back to the shop and he has the opal, but Howard doesn't have the ring, Howard takes the opal and is like, if you want it, come to the auction. And then he tells him, somehow he arranges to get him the ring back at another time. I don't remember. This plot is very complex. I took as good of notes as I could, considering how fast this movie moves from one thing to the next. But anyway, so then Howard goes to the auction. He sees that it's appraised for $200-something thousand. He's like, that is way below what I thought. Not to also shout out to the what do you call it? Not secretary. What are they called?
Like the receptionist or
the
assistant?
Shout out to the receptionist. Her performance is great.
Oh, it's incredible.
I love
the pitch perfect version of, you know, customer service person who their boss has all the power and they represent the boss, but they also have to play nice with the client, but the client is really on their last nerve. Like she handles all that so well.
I also like seeing someone interacting with all of this nonsense that does not give a flying flip about it, because everybody else in this movie cares in some way, shape, or form about how this world of dealing things works. This woman does not care at all. And so she's literally just like, it's a fucking rock. Like, I don't care if it's $1 million. I don't care if it's $20. Just say what you need to say and leave me leave me alone.
Yeah. Just get it here on time or not.
Or don't. I don't care.
I literally do not care. Yes.
I could care less.
Can I say too, I mean, I have no idea why Anna, the auction appraiser woman that Howard deals with, why she actually puts up with him when he puts her through so much. But that moment in particular where he's talking to her on the phone and he's like, all right, well, you know, this is not going to work. This lower estimate is not going to work for me. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to take it out of the programs and make an announcement at the beginning. Yep, that's what you're going to do. Thank you very much. And she's like, no, we're not going to do that. No. And he's just like, yep, okay, great. That sounds good. Thank you. I wanted to throttle him. It is the most annoying thing. The specific way that he chooses to handle that circumstance is just so freaking irritating. And yeah, I don't know why she put up with him and didn't just pull the opal completely from the auction.
I feel like they have history. That's my gut. This is not their first time interacting. Somehow she owes him something or he's of benefit to her somehow. Like, this is not their first time communicating. That's my opinion. But yes, so we go to this auction where Howard has asked his, I think, uncle to up the bids so that KG will pay more money for the stone. And so he ends up upping it to what, like $190,000, almost $200,000,
right.
I think.
That sounds right. Because Howard wanted to get it up to $250,000 to $250,000, but he can't get it up that far. He can only get it up to $190,000. And KG is like, no, that's too high for me. So Howard's poor uncle has to end up paying for this opal that he then gives back to Howard.
I love how Howard's like, can I have the opal? And his uncle's like, take the fucking opal. Like, I don't care. You know, like the stone doesn't mean anything to him either. But yeah, so then this sequence of events kind of leads us up to our climax of the movie, which is Howard goes to work and this is a scene where, I think, so this happens to me every once in a while with movies where I watch them and then there's specific scenes that kind of pop up in my memory from time to time whenever something's happening in my life and like my brain is just transported to that particular scene. This is one that I think about, unfortunately, not infrequently, the scene where Howard goes into work and he goes into his office and he's kind of having his breakdown and he's crying and saying, I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, I'm so fucked up. I've done all these things and I'm trying to fix it, but I don't know how. And there's nothing I can do and blah, blah, blah. And
he's got a bloody nose too, because he met the Arno's men on the streets and they gave him a working over. If I'm remembering that right. So yeah, he's stumbling into his office. He's got black eyes. He's got bloody nose.
The opal isn't worth anything. His uncle now he has to pay his uncle back and da 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 da. And so all of these things are kind of culminating in this perfect storm and he has a breakdown. And I remember the first time I saw this movie, I told a friend after the fact when they had watched it, I was like, this is a scene that I relate to so much. Not that I have done these things that Howard has done or anything close to it, at least not that I think. I have had these moments where it's just kind of this perfect storm of my life. Then all of a sudden it just becomes too much. And I literally say the same exact things that he says here of like, I'm so fucked up. I'm trying to do everything right. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, just over and over and over again. And I just think that this scene, not only is it a great performance from Adam Sandler, but I think it just feels so honest and so real of what happens to human beings, I would assume. Maybe just me and Howard, I don't know. But I think it seems like a realistic portrayal of how humans respond when things just get to a point where it's too overwhelming and you don't know what to do and you just kind of break down and you don't even have words of what to say other than like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I just think it's a really great scene. And then we have Julia coming in. She's like, yeah, I feel really bad too. I'm so sorry. Like, what? And I'm like, girl, what are you talking about?
But she does, yeah, which is really funny. But she does genuinely try to comfort her. She shows this tattoo that she got of his name.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Which again is one of the reasons that I think her affection for him is genuine, because it's like he broke up with her. She moved out of the apartment and yet she still went out and got a new tattoo.
And he's like, why did you do that? Yeah. And then this is when she tells him like, I can be your home. You're my home, you know?
Yeah. Which, by the way, I mean, so much appreciation again for Adam Sandler's performance. He is brilliant in this movie, and I remember us discussing the actor nominations from this year, and you know, how frustrating it was that he couldn't get a nomination because he really deserved it.
There was another person that was snubbed that year. I don't remember who it was. I remember it was like Adam Sandler and one other guy that I wanted to be nominated.
Pretty sure that this was the year where I had like my list of best actor nominees was like 8 long, and
none of them were nominated.
Not none of them, but some of them were nominated, and many of them were not. Because this was the 1917 year, if you remember.
Oh, that was the other one. Yeah, George.
Yeah, we really
wanted George
Mackay to get nominated.
Yeah.
I also think Matthew Rhys is really brilliant in Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Anyway, to say, we don't need to really look at that.
Yeah. We've probably already talked about that for hours.
We probably. But the other thing I was going to say, because we haven't mentioned it yet, but I really love Julia Fox in this movie. I think
she's great.
She's great. She's so natural and warm. And I know she's sort of she's kind of a celebrity figure. Like you'll see her kind of in paparazzi shots and doing, you know, she has this very out there sense of style. I don't know how much acting she's done apart from this movie. I know she does a lot of sort of public appearances. I think she might have a podcast, things like that, but
she hasn't done much acting. I looked up her IMDb. Okay,
yeah, I would love to see her do more acting because I think she's really, really wonderful in this movie.
Yeah, she does a great job. So yeah, after this breakdown scene, so Geneva, I'm just going to kind of say the rest of the progression of the movie.
Just speed through it
all blends together. Yeah, then we can take bits and pieces. So so they have this breakdown scene where Howard is at his low and he's like, I owe everyone money. I don't know how to repay any of them what I owe. And then he gets a phone call that says, actually, KG is coming by and he's going to pay you for the opal. And so then
he's still interested.
Then all of a sudden he's flying high again. He's like, everybody get ready, blah, 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 blah. So then KG comes in and then he gives Howard money for the opal, which Howard then obviously takes. And then KG leaves with the opal as the mob money collectors come in and they're like, where's our money? And so then Howard texts Julia and is like, hey, go next door to the window. So he takes the money, he hands it in a bag over to Julia in the other window so that she can take it and go bet it on a basketball game that KG is now going to go play.
He books her a helicopter.
Yes,
for
he
her
does.
To fly her to the casino so that she can place this bet, by the way.
Yes, to place this bet so that on this game that KG is playing, because he's confident now that he can win because now he has the opal. So Julia goes to bet the money, and the Howard ends up locking these mobsters into this door that has already been pre-established that sometimes it's janky and it doesn't open. So Howard intentionally leaves this thing in the door so that they can't get in or out. So they are stuck in there for the entirety of this basketball game where Howard is pacing back and forth. You know, obviously he's extremely invested in this game because if they don't win, he's really fucked. So he's yelling and screaming. And meanwhile, Julia is over at the casino dealing with this helicopter guy who's being creepy and weird. But she knows that she can take advantage of him in order to get what she needs. So she's also watching the basketball game. Long story short, KG and his team, they end up winning the game, which means that Howard has won all of this money from his bet. He's
won. The bets he placed, I think they say he wins like $1.2 million. It's a huge payout.
So he scores big. He hits real big. And so Julia and Howard are freaking out. I love you, blah, 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 blah. Come back, all these things. And so then finally, we see KG on the screen kind of being interviewed. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'd like to give thanks to this rock, blah, blah, blah. So then Julia manages to leave the casino because she leaves separately, waits in a car, and then the helicopter man collects the money bags for her and walks out so that the people that were kind of following her and hoping to get the money from her don't make the connection that the money this helicopter guy is leaving with is actually Julia's money. And then Howard ends up unlocking the door, letting the mobsters and his brother-in-law out of this little entrance to his store, and immediately the main mobster guy shoots Howard in the head. The brother-in-law
right in the face,
and the brother-in-law is like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And then the mobster proceeds to shoot him in the head. And then the mobsters, there's 2 of them left, they end up basically breaking all of the glass and stealing seemingly all of Howard's jewelry and watches that he owns in that space. And then the movie ends with us zooming into the bullet hole in Howard's face, and then we move into the magical world of gems again. And then it's over. So that's how the movie ends. What do we think about that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a lot, but it
it's
feels
a lot.
So it's so inevitable. Like, again, watching it the second time around and knowing where everything was going to go, it really could not have ended anyway except for how it did. And it is so, I mean, we said this already, but it is so perfectly ironic and tragic the way it ends with him finally hitting the big score that he's been trying to get this entire movie. And at that same moment is when he has finally pushed things too far, and it finally, the universe bounces back on him and he gets killed. And that idea that, you know, Julia, who is kind of, you know, with the very low bar set in this movie, kind of the best person, you know, the person that we like the most in this movie, she does have all this money, but she's headed back to a very uncertain fate. We don't know if the mobsters are going to find her and kill her. We don't know if she's going to get away with all the money. Howard's shop is being robbed. We don't know what's going to happen to his family. It's just all of this chaos and mess is just completely left behind. And, you know, it's really all from the decisions that he makes. But I love the I mean, there's just a beautiful, you know, twistedly beautiful circularity to the way that it starts with that sort of zoom into the gem and then into Howard's colon and then Howard's life, and then we end by zooming into the bullet hole and then kind of back into the gem. It's almost, it makes the movie seem like it's almost a dream of the gem. You know, it kind of gives this cyclical nature of, you know, gems like this. I mean, so many diamonds that exist in the world, the ones that are really big and have names, they have these really torrid, bloody histories to them. And you get the sense that this is kind of the beginning of a new cycle. You know, there's going to be probably so many deaths and so much pain connected to this one gem as well. And Howard's is just kind of kickstarting it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think even though Howard's story specifically ends here, he's leaving a lot of chaos behind, right? Like, KG still has that opal. Who knows what he's going to do with it? Julia has all of this money. The mobsters are still out and around. There's still people that he owes money. You know, it's just like, just because Howard is dead, there's a lot more going on here. And so I like that idea of kind of, you know, the cycle continues. Like, Howard's part in this play might be over, but there's a whole other story going on that's going to continue and continue and continue. So yeah, I remember the first time I saw this, I was in the theater. Everyone in the theater audibly reacted when he was shot in the head. And it's interesting because I look at it now and I wonder, what type of ending did I expect this movie to have? Because there's no resolution to this. There's no way that it could be like, okay, and Howard learned his lesson and it's the end. Like, it's very fitting that he is shot at the end. But I just wonder, what type of ending was I expecting? Because no other ending would have felt right. It would have felt cheap or forced or whatever. So I love ultimately how it ended. And I love the shock that it gave all of us in the theater and how we all kind of left the movie and were able to talk about it after the fact. I think it's a really gutsy choice made by the Safdie brothers to do that, to have this whole movie be just propelled forward and so involved in this character. And it's not even like he's, you know, they have a discussion and then he's killed, or like there's no leading up to it at all. It's just
it
boom,
is so
he's
fast.
dead.
You
so
blink and
sudden.
you could miss it.
it's so sudden that it almost makes you think, wait, is this a joke? Did that just happen? You know, is he fake dead? But it's like, no, he's dead, you know? And like the brother-in-law dying feels more predictable. It's like, okay, Howard's dead, now the brother-in-law, it's less shocking. But Howard being killed so quickly in that way, when there's such a build and a build and a build and a build, and it's just, nope, it's over. I don't know. I find that to be a really, really awesome ending. It's just so great. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I have to say. I don't know if there's anything else in depth with it that you want to discuss. The ending sequence, there's just so much going on and it moves so quickly. But I feel like by that point, it's like everything's already been established. It's just it coming to its logical conclusion given the possibilities.
Yeah. It's very inevitable, as I think I said. I did want to circle back to Damani.
Sure.
Just because actually I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on his character. I feel like I find him so, I mean, Lakeith Stanfield is wonderful in this movie, but I find his character very confounding because I just feel like I don't understand what the relationship is between Howard and Damani. Like I understand that Damani's role is to basically go out there and hobnob with high flyers and bring them back to Howard's shop so that he can get a percentage of what they buy. But I'm just very curious because they're so antagonistic, and Damani seems to have no loyalty toward Howard whatsoever. He's constantly telling Howard he's going to bring the opal, and then he doesn't bother to explain on the phone like that, oh, KG's going to keep it a little bit longer. He like makes Howard go to all the effort of actually meeting him and then tells him what's going to happen.
He also tells him at one point, he's like, I forget the specific point that it is. Oh, it's when KG comes to bring him the opal and Howard doesn't have the ring on hand. Damani is like, what are you doing? If you're going to treat my people that I bring in here like this, I'm going to take my people somewhere else. And that's what leads to him pouring the juice into the fish tank because,
that's right.
Because he's like, this isn't worth this. Like, why am I even working with you? If you're going to treat me and my people like this, I'm out of here, you know?
Yeah. This is the thing. And like, Damani apparently has a bunch of watches that he's trying to sell to people on his own that Howard's allowing him to keep there, though Howard seems to be helping himself with the watches. And I find their relationship really confounding. Like, how did they get connected? Did their business relationship at one point work and now it doesn't as Howard is going off the rails? Or has it just always been this chaotic and toxic?
I would assume so. That it started somewhere and just got more difficult as time went on. I know you won't be able to fully understand this comparison because you haven't finished it. But it kind of reminds me of the relationship between Jesse Pinkman and Walter White. It's like they start out in this place where they're on the same page of just like, okay, let's do this deal to make some money and then we'll be set. And then over time, even though they hate each other, they somehow keep coming back together and doing business together because they recognize that ultimately the only way that I can make the money that I need, either that I want or that I need to survive or whatever, like we just have to be together. But wait, no, I hate you. But wait, And I think that, not that I really know much about the world of illegal selling of things, whether it be fraud jewelry or drugs or whatever. Maybe that's a common dynamic. I don't know, but that could be a common dynamic of you start in one place and it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And then it gets to a point where it's so transactional and maybe you both owe each other so many different things and so many different favors because of the history that you have that like it's hard to just leave. But I don't actually know.
There's a really great little acting moment. There's so many great little moments in this movie for a movie that is as fast-paced and loud and stimulating and propulsive as this is. There are a lot of really nice, just little moments where the camera will linger on a character doing something, and it just tells you something about that character, even though the focus of the story is on Howard. But I want to say it's when KG comes back to the office for the second time to return the opal, and Howard doesn't have the ring. It might be a different scene, but the camera sort of spins around Damani, and he just has this look on his face, and you can just see him give up on Howard then and there. Like, it's like in that moment, he just completely sees through. Not that he really had a high opinion of Howard before, because he did not. But it's just like any last lingering respect for Howard he might have had, you can just see it go out the window. And from then on, he's just even more antagonistic toward him than he was before.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it has something to do with something you said in the beginning of, I don't know if I necessarily agree with this, but maybe, I don't know. But you said something in the beginning about maybe what we're seeing Howard as now is a recent development. Like he's always kind of been this person, but recently it's gotten to a whole new level of just being a whole lot worse, and everyone is just like, wow, you are a tornado of destruction more than ever before. And so maybe that's kind of culminating in their relationship to a point where he decides to leave, and it wasn't like that before.
Yeah. Well, it is fascinating that the script never there is no indication of all the inferences we're making about maybe Howard was different before. These are all just inferences. Like the script doesn't tell us anything about Howard's childhood, about what he was like as a young man, any traumas that he may have gone through, any ups and downs or other experiences. There's nothing about his backstory. We're just meeting him as he is, and we can make certain inferences based on what we see of his family life and things like that. But I think it's a really interesting decision to create a character who is so messed up, and to intentionally withhold any sort of explanation of why that might be. Because there are many reasons why it might be. And that's not part of the story that the Safdie brothers are telling.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that this is, I was just kind of voicing something that you had said before and running with it, but I don't necessarily agree that I think that this is something where this is like a different level than it was before. I see him as having been like this for years and years and years. I see him being this way for a very long time. It doesn't seem like something, at least in my read of it, I don't think it's something that's like a new, like more advanced version of what he was like before.
Yeah. I guess what I mean is, I think he has always, or at least for years, has had these addiction issues and impulse control issues and personality flaws. I just think we're meeting him at the last moment where it has gotten completely out of control. I think maybe he before could have kept a lid on it, and that's why he was able to maintain his lifestyle and his relationships for as long as he was. But now we're seeing the last few months where it is completely spun out of control and everything is breaking down.
Yeah, and I think that, you talking about actors' moments in this movie, I think that we have little hints of that, which I loved these moments in this movie. I didn't notice them the last time, or maybe I did and just forgot. But there are some very short, brief shots of Howard's brother-in-law reacting to Howard's state, what he's doing or what he's saying or whatever. And he looks very, like, genuinely very grieved of just like, oh, wow, this is really, like, he looks sad. He looks saddened by Howard's state of mind. And I think that suggests that there is maybe a thought that, people who are observing this from the outside, and seemingly someone who cares for him in some way because they're family, this is hard for them to witness in a way that it hasn't been before. People recognize it is the end, But clearly Howard doesn't at all. Howard is like, oh yeah, let's keep going. Everyone else is like,
I can keep going. Yeah. And conversely too, again with the little moments when Howard gets the big payoff, when KG wins the game at the end, you can see that Arno is genuinely impressed and kind of excited for him a little bit, like he's like, I can't believe he pulled it off. Wow. And like he has this little moment of like, oh, all right, well, I guess he did pull it off. I guess everything is going to turn out okay. And then it doesn't because his bodyguard has been pushed to the snapping point. But yeah, like there is that human, texture to that relationship. It's not just loan shark that I've borrowed money from who's a gangster and is going to kill me. It's I have this sort of human connection with this person who is completely out of control, and I have to do my job as a gangster and get my money back, but I do also have some level of caring about this person and their ultimate fate.
I also found it interesting during this scene, which is again something that I only noticed on the second rewatch. I think that the brother-in-law and perhaps the second guy in that little glass room, they're not even watching the basketball game. This is a whole game. Basketball games last what, like two hours ish, give or take. They're watching him this entire game, but there comes a point when someone asks the other guy, like, what's the score of the game? Are they winning? Like, I don't know. So clearly Arno has not been watching the game at all. He's sitting there watching Howard this whole time, going through this crazy experience of ups and downs and yelling at the TV and going through all these different emotions. And I found that to be really, really fascinating. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, they're all watching this game, really invested in like, oh my gosh, are they going to win or are they not? And I think that knowing this time that, first of all, the guy who's going to shoot Howard is not invested in the game at all because he's going to kill him no matter what. And then Arno can't even see the game from where he's sitting. He can't even see what the score is. So I find it to be really fascinating that Howard is in this universe where everything is revolving around the game in this moment. But for the people who are there, they don't care about the game at all. They just are focusing on Howard. And I just found that to be really, really interesting. I didn't pick up on that the first time, but yeah.
Yeah. Random question for you. There are 2 or 3 scenes throughout this film where another man that Howard apparently owes money to, he's like kind of a short guy. He's got
guy with the hair.
Very fluffy gray hair. And Howard just kind of brushes him off. What do you think is the purpose of that sort of, it's hard to even call it a subplot because it doesn't really get any resolution. It's just there's this other guy on the peripheral and he doesn't really play a part in the conclusion at all. But why do you think that was included in the movie?
I think it just shows that Howard is involved in a larger web. Like he might have this whole thing going on with the Opal thing, but he's got whole other things going on with something else that he sold someone yesterday or this morning. Because the guy who's coming, that guy who shows up every once in a while, we see him in the beginning and he makes some sort of deal with this, $20,000 watch or whatever, and he's like, bring it back to me. That's a $20,000 watch or something like that. And so I just think it shows that it's not just this Opal scenario that Howard's got going on. He's got lots of different deals with lots of different people. And so this is a bigger, this is a whole universe that Howard has created for himself. So that's kind of what I see the purpose of that, just reminding us that Howard is really, he's an addict. Like he's got all of these different deals going on. And don't forget, it's not just this one. You've got another one too. And the fact that there's one other one suggests that there's probably other ones that we don't know about, like they're not showing up in this particular moment. That doesn't mean they don't exist,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And I guess I would add to that too is I think it's notable how different this guy that Howard owes money to is from someone like Arno, in that he doesn't seem like your typical gangster at all. He seems relatively soft-spoken relative to everyone else in the movie.
Seems new to the game.
Yeah, he seems very new to the game. He seems much more vulnerable, much more lower level. I think the watch that Howard gives him that he claims is $20,000, later the guy says, oh, he scammed me with a fake watch. Like, he's getting nothing out of it, basically. And I think that also shows not only that Howard has so many things going on, but also that Howard's the schemes that he is running and the people that he's cheating and defrauding, like there's such a wide web, and it's trickling down to even the people who have really no business dealing with him, and who, he's preying on the vulnerable in a sense. Not that this guy is necessarily like vulnerable seems like a weird place word
He's
to
not
say,
a professional basketball player that has millions of
but
dollars.
yeah, and he's not a professional gangster who has, bodyguards who can follow him everywhere. He like shows up, and he has like his brother who's also kind of an older man like he is, and does not look like he could take anyone in a fight. Like it's almost like they're a representation of Howard's conscience, or the behind unseen damage that Howard is leaving in his wake, who just kind of show up to just kind of stand there and be a little bit irritating to Howard and just kind of remind him about everything that's going on, and then he just kind of swats them away and keeps going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad you brought him up. I forgot about that guy. I mean, he's in it so little.
Yeah, easy to forget.
Yeah.
Howard certainly forgets about him.
Right. Okay, anything else before we move on?
I'm trying to think. I mean, you did a great job of summarizing this plot. It
was
complicated.
Yeah. And I still made a bunch of mistakes. But okay, so moving on to critics, I thought this was really interesting. I was looking at Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and according to like critics on Metacritic, this movie has a 91%, and according to the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 91%. But the audience gave it a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Fascinating.
Which I was going to go through and read reviews to see like what the audience thought about it, to see like why it ended up averaging at 52%. I didn't have time to do that. But I think it's a tragedy that this movie has 52% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes. And I looked it up on Letterboxd too. I was like, does the audience on Letterboxd dislike this movie? It has like its highest scores are 4 stars on Letterboxd, but it also goes into 4.5 and 5. So I don't know what's happening with the Rotten Tomatoes audience, but y'all need to do better. But anyway, so as far as some written reviews,
sorry, as you're talking, I'm scrolling through the audience reviews for Letterboxd, and I just found this one that says, "Too much loud yelling and cussing. Bad ending."
Wow. I think you missed the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I pulled 2 reviews. One comes from Ty Burr at the Boston Globe, and he says, "Because Howard never stops moving, neither does the movie, and the effect is both exhausting and electrifying. Watching this latest bulletin from the Safdie brothers, Benny and Josh, is like grabbing hold of a high voltage line. It doesn't feel great, but good luck letting go." I thought that was an interesting review. That for me kind of sums up a good concept of this movie.
Yeah, exhausting and electrifying is a great way to describe this movie.
Yes, for sure. And then so my second one comes from Wendy Ide at Screen Daily, and she says, "The latest from the Safdie brothers is a cracking follow-up to Good Time, a jangling panic attack of a movie and a timely reminder that when he puts his mind to it, Adam Sandler can be one of the finest actors currently working." I really liked that because I wanted to make sure I had a review in here that mentioned Adam Sandler's performance, because it is absolutely amazing in this movie. I am very upset he was not nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah, he is brilliant in this movie. He does the range of emotions that he has to show, the way he has to be so delusional and so constantly sure of himself. His mind is always working. He's always trying to work out the next scheme. And yet he has these little moments where these cracks of vulnerability show through. He handles that so well. So well. Yeah, he's great in this. I think it's his best role. I love him in Punch Drunk Love and the Meyerowitz Stories, but this is a whole other level. But yeah, so as far as awards and legacy, we've kind of explicitly stated this, but this movie won nothing that was from like a large notable award. It also was not nominated for anything. Absolutely disgraceful.
It's awful. But I did note that it was nominated for some Critics' Choice. It didn't win, but it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director for both of the brothers, and Best Editing. If I had my say, I think as far as Academy Awards, this should have been nominated for actor, director, editing, writing, or screenplay rather. And, that's obviously it would have been nice to have other things too, but those are kind of the main ones that I would go for. I don't know about Best Picture. I don't remember the other Best Picture nominees that year. But It's a great movie.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if I'm remembering it right, that was the Parasite year. And it was a pretty good lineup from what I remember.
Yeah.
But I mean, with 10 pictures, there's always one that you could bump out.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of that's that. Yeah, as far as what this movie will stick with me, I mean, just the vibe of it. I mean, the Safdie brothers, their movies have such vibes. I wonder with their next film if it's going to have a similar type of vibe, because Good Time and Uncut Gems are definitely within the same sphere. I wonder.
Do they have announced a next plan, like a next movie that has been announced? Because I know that Benny Safdie has discussed wanting to do more acting. So I wasn't sure if they were still continuing to plan to direct together.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything along those lines. I just hope that they'll make something else. And if they were to, I wonder if it would be kind of in the same repertoire. So what's going to stick with me with this movie? I love the vibe of it. I don't think that there are many other movies like this that are out there. And honestly, just Adam Sandler's performance. He is really he's a showstopper in this one. And I think it was such great casting for him, and he pulls it off. So yeah, that's what's gonna, obviously, you know, I said the scene where he has his breakdown, and then the scene that was the opening quote to this episode, which was, you know, that this is how I win, both iconic scenes
also
in my mind.
A meme, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, that's kind of what sticks with me. How about you, Geneva? I know you said you liked it better the second time around, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a vibes movie, like you said.
Yes. And
I can definitely see myself watching it again. I think it'll be a movie where I will need to be in a very specific mood to watch, but yeah, I could see this being a movie that I'll throw on if I'm in a mood where I'm like, I need to drown out my brain with something that is a lot of stimulation. And I think this movie would do the trick. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so that is our discussion of Uncut Gems. Geneva, what are we talking about next week?
Yes, next week we are going to be continuing with the theme of men being pushed to the breaking point, but with a very, very different,
this time out at sea,
set of vibes. Yes. Gonna just follow some dudes being dudes out on the high seas. It's Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Very excited to revisit this movie.
This is another movie that was also on my list to talk about at some point. You just got to it first, so needless to say, I love this movie. I'm excited to talk about it. Also, yes. This movie's 20 years old. Came out in 2003. This movie's 20 years old. Absolutely nuts. Which means I was very young when this first came. Well, not very young, but.
Did you see this? Well, we can discuss it.
I probably saw this when I was too young, but you know, that's an ongoing trend with me and my life. But yeah. Okay. So yeah, next week we will be talking about Master and Commander. So, come back for that episode. Until then, have a good week. I never know how to end the episode. Like, okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at yourpickpod@gmail.com. Our theme song was composed by Joel Rushton, and our podcast graphic was designed by Kara Shin. If you like this show and want to hear more, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Until next time.